Welcome to the Powerhouse podcast. I'm your host, Brian Harmon, President and CEO of the United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation, and here with Dr. Phil Yeski, my trusty co-host. And Phil, it's been a little while since we've been together, but certainly it's not because we haven't been busy.
Certainly not.
No.
There have been other obstacles and planning and calendar events, but really happy to be back and sharing some time with you.
I mean, you've been traveling the globe representing UMDF from a mitochondrial disease standpoint. You spent some time at the EuroMIT conference, and of course, right on the tail of that was our own conference. And unfortunately, you couldn't join us this year in Symposium. I'm calling you out right on the beginning of the call.
I think but most everybody knows at this point, but I didn't just bring souvenirs back from EuroMIT conference in Italy. I also brought COVID, and unfortunately, it could not have been worse timing. And the symptoms just did not abate quick enough to allow me to travel to Charlotte to be at the UMDF symposium, which was very disappointing to say the least. Brian, you know what we pour into that meeting, right? That's the culmination of a year's worth of planning. And there's so many people I look forward to seeing, sometimes just once a year at that symposium. So it's a good reminder of just how much it means to me, both personally and professionally. So,
and the only reason why I called it out for you too, Phil, I know you wouldn't take the moment just to be able to recognize all the folks who, not just our staff who put in the good work, but I think about our legions of volunteers, our clinician leaders, our patient leaders who spend so much time making that event possible. And of course, you were back at home headquarters, and I joke around calling you every day to give you a quick download. And what a successful week! 650 plus people joining us once again.
Yeah, phenomenal. And, again, I enjoyed it in a different way this year. Right? By not being there, you appreciate it more, right? Have something taken away from you, and now you take the time to appreciate it. But, it also gave me a different perspective on it, right? And what everybody is doing to make it work, and the fact that we don't let obstacles stop us in delivering mission. And
that's right.
That symposium is one of the most important things we do in any given year. And with or without Phil there, the show went on.
Yeah, always such a great time to reflect, to celebrate, of course, to learn. It's one of the main reasons we're there. And, shout out to our scientific program leaders, Drs. Doug Wallace, Peter McGuire, Deborah Murdoch, Fernando Scalia. Boy, put together a really great scientific program. I know you're still hearing from our scientific friends about how special the program was this year.
Yeah, I did. I received a lot of very positive feedback on the quality of the scientific program. And as always, I think what people really appreciate most of all is that opportunity to intermingle, right? To bring the scientists together with the patient families and industry, exchange perspectives. This is the secret sauce, right, of UMDF Symposium. And sounds like it was another winning combination.
One of the goals every year outside of making sure we're educating our community, and particularly our patient community, is finding better ways to activate the community, to engage the community. And I know one such passion project of yours, and really in the weeks leading into Symposium, was the launch of this new clinical research pavilion. Right. And, I know you and I talked at the beginning of all this to say it'd be nice just to see kind of how this works this first year. But boy, I think we took it much further than that. 75 patients participated on site. For the uninitiated, tell us a little bit about what happened with this research pavilion this year.
Sure. Yeah. I think, as we continue to work to build this culture of clinical trials, right, within mitochondrial disease, that the only way we're going to get to the treatments and cures that we all want for our patient community is that we have to develop a culture of clinical trials, the patient community knowing what they can do, sponsors that understand the needs of the patient community, clinicians that can effectively work at that interface, right, to advance these trials. It's all part of the culture. And so the opportunity that we identified is we're bringing 600 plus people together at UMDF Symposium, and a large large percentage of that, roughly a third, right, are patient families. And so why not take advantage of an opportunity to educate and participate in clinical research? So the education piece is, you may hear me talking about it or receive an email about clinical studies and what's going on in the mitochondrial disease space. But, it just, you're not quite sure, right? But by being at symposium and having a chance to go through a process where you learn about a study, it's not a drug trial, right? It's other types of clinical research, but you learn about the study, you consent to participating in it, you participate in the study. These are all the same steps that are required to participate in drug trials when the time comes for you. So it was a great educational opportunity, and importantly, we captured data directly from the patients that we can use in research. So there were 3 studies inside the pavilion, and all the feedback I heard is that people really enjoyed learning about it, participating in it, and I think it's just emboldened us to think even bigger in 2024.
Well, there's no turning back now, right?
Yeah, right.
Already planning what's going to happen in Cleveland. Quick shout out to Cleveland, where our event's going to be held next year in 2024. I know it's hard for a Steelers fan, Phil, but a Cleveland Browns fan myself, I get to celebrate a little bit back in my hometown. I will
hold my nose and drive over.
Thank you. Well, all the great activity happening for the research pavilion. Now, remind me, if patients weren't at symposium or didn't have a chance to participate, are there any ongoing opportunities with those particular opportunities that were happening?
Thanks for mentioning that. So one of the studies closed at the symposium, and so that was the one being run by Dr. Z from CHOP. But the other large study involving digital video assessments for patients that have a genetically confirmed POLG disease or primary mitochondrial myopathy. So if you've participated in a clinical trial focused on primary mitochondrial myopathy, then you're a candidate to participate in this too. And the idea of this study, which is ongoing and now through remote recruitment, so you won't have to travel, everything will be sent to you, all the work will be done remote with you. But the general idea is, can we use something like an iPhone to capture daily activities, right, that are representative of what it means to live with mitochondrial disease, track those on video, do that over 2 or 3 time points, and see if there's differences that can be detected in the video itself. So there's a company we're working with called Casimir, they're part of EMIS, that has developed a technology where physical therapists look at this study, at the videos that are submitted and score how the patients are performing, right, on any given day. And so now you have some kind of metric where you can say, well, look at this, right? Over the course of 2 or 3 months, their ability to lift a fork and feed themselves, right? Or to, do a quick walk, or to sit up from a chair, right? Things that represent real world daily tasks. If we can assess differences over a short period of time, that's the beginning of developing very patient-centric outcome measures that could be used in a clinical trial. So now not just a biomarker, what's your lactate level doing, or even a standard clinical assessment like the 6-minute walk test. These would be highly tailored to your type of mitochondrial disease, based on actual daily tasks. So it's a really exciting project, and in collaboration with the Mito Foundation and POLG Foundation, we're really excited to be able to advance this small pilot, right? And the fact that even after symposium, we're still able to recruit and try to get patients in. So if you're watching this and interested, please check it out on our website. There, you'll see all the instructions for how to see if you're a candidate.
Yeah, it seems like one that if you were, maybe a little anxious about participating in clinical research, this is a nice entree into that, right? It's a little more of the day of the life and things that you're already doing at home oftentimes, but capturing that in a way that we can track over time. Very exciting.
Yeah, and you're just trying to minimize the burden, right? As well, by having everything come to you and explain through, video calls, etc. It's a really great opportunity to take a first step into clinical research. And our hope, of course, is that you feel emboldened and excited, right, by doing that. And when a clinical trial comes and you're a candidate to participate in it, you're ready to do it because you know what's involved.
Right. And one such place that you'll have that information or that'll be made available to you, of course, is our MitoShare patient registry. Both these studies ran through MitoShare. I know we celebrated a big milestone. We had a goal of hitting 1,400 by the end of this year for us, and we went well beyond that. And special thanks to those patients and those families who step up and have the courage and raise their hand to say, yes, this is important to me. And I know you're proud to see the meteoric rise of the MitoShare patient registry.
Yeah,
you're
proud and appreciative, I think, is probably the most important word. Just appreciative that so many members of our community see the value in the registry, or trust that we're putting forward something and asking them to participate because it is important. And over time, we'll continue to build out the registry, the capabilities of it, and that makes the value proposition stronger over time too. So, a big thank you to everyone that has already signed up. And if you're unsure, please check it out on the UMDF website. And if you have any questions, we're prepared to answer them, have a discussion with you about why it's important to participate in patient registries like MitoShare.
Well, speaking of appreciation, certainly a time to celebrate and share our appreciation for the unwavering support of our donor community. We, UMDF, together with our donors and our community of supporters, just celebrate our biggest fundraising year yet. And I think as we see these programs come to life, right, we need to have the little, see, I don't have my producer here. We can do special effects, but we should have confetti blast, right?
Have any little emojis.
Yeah. And I haven't had coffee this afternoon yet. Trust me, I'm a lot more excited that my voice is coming across, but really exciting for our organization, for the community, and ultimately for the patient families we serve. These programs that we talk about, access to no-cost genetic testing programs, patient registries, funding the best research no matter where it is in the world. It costs money. It costs big money to do that. And our donors every year step up and have stepped up in a new way this year. Fresh off the press is the launch of our new venture philanthropy initiative. And Phil, I know we can't spend we could spend an entire podcast talking about venture philanthropy, and perhaps we'll do that in the future. But I'd be remiss if I didn't tell folks to visit the mitofund.org to learn more about what we're doing in venture philanthropy. This has been a passion project of yours, Phil, for the past couple of years, and I applaud your leadership in helping bring it to life. But share with our audience a little bit about venture philanthropy and what it can mean for our community.
Yeah, I'll give the nickel version, I promise.
Yeah,
this is another one that I love talking about because, to me, it represents how an organization like UMDF continues to evolve as the needs of the patient community change, right, over time. And because we have a number of companies that are actively conducting clinical trials and a whole lot more behind them that are interested in conducting clinical trials in mitochondrial disease, it was really the right time for us to think about activating this new program around venture philanthropy. And the general idea is that UMDF, because of all the experience we bring, the strong networks we have to clinicians, to patients within the industry, we can bring all that knowledge and expertise to early stage companies, but do it in a way in which we actually invest in these companies. And as they progress and increase in value, we have the chance to increase the value of our investment. And then we're not going to be long-term holders. Our goal is to take those gains and reinvest them into more companies, right? So that it becomes truly a flywheel of innovation. And the whole goal here is de-risking the mitochondrial disease therapeutic development space, right? It's still emerging. There's many large companies that haven't come to mitochondrial disease yet, and many small companies that are considering it. So anything we can do to make it a little bit easier for them to raise the money necessary to conduct their studies, to test their compounds. There are no guarantees in drug development. I've said this 1,000 different ways in 100 different forums. We never know. That's why you have to conduct the research and why it's so important. but the opportunity to associate with some promising early stage companies, try to increase the value, right, of the investment we're making, help these companies to thrive and survive, raise the additional capital, and then reinvest those gains back in. We're not the first to
right.
do
I was just
this.
going to say, there's
Right?
great samples of organizations. Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund have found great success in this approach to philanthropy and more importantly, funding science.
Yeah, and Brian, I think we're kindred spirits, and we like to go fast, right, and do things. But probably one of the things I'm most proud of here is that we've been tracking this, right? So I came on staff 10 years ago and thinking about venture philanthropy. But at each of those check-ins, right, 2013, 2015, it wasn't the right time for various reasons, right? But now in 2023, it is the right time. And we acted on it and took our time in structuring it and benchmarking other disease communities. So I'm really excited about getting started with it and also reporting back to the community on our progress.
That's right. More shots on goal and different shots on goal is really what we're going for here. And I think it deserves its own episode. So you and I will hit the editorial calendar after this and plan out a venture philanthropy episode, because certainly I want to make sure we have enough time to get to our special guest. We talked about Symposium as being a time to learn, a time to reflect. It's also a time to celebrate, right? Celebrate volunteer leadership. Celebrate those who have dedicated a lifetime to supporting our organization, but moreover, the mito community at large. And I'm so honored today and privileged to have such a special guest for us joining us on the Powerhouse podcast today. Miss Sharon Shaw joins us in the Powerhouse. Sharon, how are you?
Hello, you two.
I did not give you a formal introduction because I don't even know how I would go about introducing you. So at some point, Sharon, we're going to draw that out of you. You're going to give yourself your own titles. You're going to introduce yourself.
It's
because
just me. It's
just
me.
you. We'll put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah,
a rhinestone t-shirt. Sharon likes the glittery the green rhinestone t-shirt. It's fair to say, Sharon, you live our brand. You even got the green earrings on today, I notice.
I know.
It's good to be with you today.
True. It's true.
So Sharon, one of the things that I was trying to get into that I did fail to introduce in my what I thought would be my seamless segue is talking about Symposium and your recognition, our honor of giving you the Stanley Davis Award, which in many respects is a lifetime volunteer service award for UMDF. And I know I caught you off guard in Charlotte, North Carolina. I want you to first talk to us a little bit about what you were feeling on stage Friday night when you received that award.
Oh my goodness. First of all, thank you for having me on. It is my honor to be with the two of you and chat. So, and thank you for going back to Friday night banquet at the Symposium, because I need to explain myself. Just so you know, this is what was going on in my head. Get up there, do the invocation, get off the stage. Do it, get off the stage. But that's not what was happening. Every time I tried to get off the stage, I realized you were keeping me on the stage and I wasn't sure why. So what happened for the people watching or listening is I was given an award, and I've never received an award, and certainly not this kind of award, Stanley Davis Leadership. And I also need to say, I knew Stan personally. I served with him on the board of trustees for the UMDF. I knew him. He was my friend. And I didn't even get to say any of that Friday night, because after what you did to me, Brian, I was of no use to anyone. Stan was a dear man, and he chaired our board for several years. And I wanted to tell a story about him, and I'll do it quickly.
No, please.
At our symposium, and I will get to the answer of your question. We had a symposium in San Diego, and sadly, we all learned that Stan got diagnosed with cancer. So none of us thought. It was right before that symposium, And I remember sitting outside. It was the Friday night banquet time, but it was outdoors. And I look up and here comes Stan. I was blown away because nobody in their right mind would ever even have thought he would have attended symposium. I was told later that he had some treatment up in the room and then came down. And that speaks to the level of commitment, loyalty, and love that most all of our volunteers have, by the way. Stan was an extreme example of that. And I wanted to share that story. And I have a beautiful photo from that night. And then shortly thereafter, we lost Stan. But he was something else. And, you know, they named this award after him, rightfully so. And I just loved that man. You know, he was a mentor and he guided me several situations as I served on the board of trustees. But man, he lived and ate and breathed UMDF and staying in the solution. So back to Friday night, what happened was I did the invocation and I was standing too long and my body started shaking. So it's part of what I deal with, the tremors and the shaking. And the next thing I know, I see Chuck Mohan come walk out from behind the curtain. And I got to tell you something, I had a physical reaction in my body. I couldn't tell you what anybody was saying, but my eyeballs were on Chuck. So the reason I had such a strong physical reaction and emotional, because I started bawling, is because I haven't seen my dear, dear friend in 5 years. It had been 5 years.
And most of our listeners know, Sharon, pardon for interrupting, most of our listeners know, viewers know, Chuck Mohan, founder of UMDF, retired about 5 years ago. I'm celebrating my 5th year. I followed Chuck. And we bring him out on stage. You had this reaction. You haven't seen him in 5 years. Sorry, continue.
No, and that's exactly right. Chuck started this foundation in his basement, and every patient, family, caregiver, everybody knows Chuck. And we, you know, because of COVID and other reasons, we either weren't at symposium because of COVID or he wasn't able to be there. So the last 5 years, we've not had his presence at symposium. So when he walked out, that was it. The blood drained from my head. And the award wasn't really the award. The other award, I mean, it was giving Chuck a hug. That man to this day is my dearest friend, and he's a mentor to me. And I'll share another story. December 1999, I was diagnosed a week before Christmas, formally diagnosed, by the way. It took me 16 years to get that formal diagnosis. A week before Christmas, I'm searching on the internet and I see the United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation. I said, you got to be kidding me. Nobody knows what mitochondrial disease is, what mitochondria, they can't even pronounce it. And here on the internet is a foundation. What in the world? So I immediately called, and Kara answered, one of our, the very first staff member of the UMDF. And I shared, I was in a devastated moment, finally getting this diagnosis. And she says, hold on, let me get Chuck. I was thinking, who the heck is Chuck? What is going on here? Chuck got on the phone and he connected with me. And by the way, in my almost 24 years serving the UMDF, he did that with everyone. That was Chuck. So he got on the phone, and it's not so important what we shared, but it's the feeling I got. The feeling I got was, oh, I found the right place. This is the support. I don't need to look any further. And I said to him, and he shared his story. He asked me what was going on with me. So I said, Chuck, I'm going to make you a promise. I'll get back to you. I need about 30 days to fall apart and grieve because I'm devastated. I was 35 at the time. I had just given birth. I had just left a career of 12 years to start my own business, from home. My background is in meeting planning, marketing, sales. So, some would say I was newly married. Some would say it was the beginning of a wonderful life. And then boom, I get this diagnosis. So I said, Chuck, give me 30 days. I'm going to get back to you. And I did. And so 30 days later, I called him back and I said, what can I do? What needs to be done? He said, well, first, let me send you to the support group. The UMDF has support groups nationally. So I'm thinking, oh, great. So he said, here it is. This is where you go. Now, keep in mind, I have been to support groups for codependency, whatever. I had a reference for what a support group was. Right. You go there and you get help, answers, and support. That's what I was expecting. So I show up, and also keep in mind, it was the first time I'd ever seen any other patient with this mitochondrial disease diagnosis. And as I was sitting there, the meeting opened up and everybody's introducing themselves. As I was sitting there, my stomach sank because of my marketing, event planning, sales background. I knew, ooh, there's a lot that needs to be done. Nobody knows how to do it. And this is going to be a lot of work. And so I then raised my hand.
So you gave yourself a job at that moment.
Yeah. Sharon. I raised my hand in tears and I said, I was just diagnosed, and is there this, and this? I need that, and that. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, they nominated me the chair of that group.
A classic story. Yeah, this is executive directors are salivating when volunteers raise their hand and say, yes, let me help.
Idiot me. I'm still in that deep grief phase.
Yeah.
All I wanted was help, answers, support. And so I was like, okay. I left that support group meeting. I was in tears. I was bawling. And my friend was with me. And I said, what did I just do? What just happened? That true story is the beginning of what and how I knew I needed to respond to this diagnosis. The help I was looking for wasn't there. And so I knew that I needed to be part of the help that I knew I needed, we needed. So, there's that quote, be the person that you want others to be to you. Mm-hmm. And so that whole scenario set actually my mindset. Mm-hmm. Sharon, stop looking for a cure, treatments. Yes, there's support. Stop looking for answers. Get to work, girl. That really is what happened to me. So I went to go get help, and I was nominated the chair to design the help that was needed. And for the last almost 24 years, that's what I've been doing. So nobody's going to care as much as I care. And nobody is going to help me at the way that I can help myself. So I need to do the work. I need to get busy. And that sort of started the path that I ended up on. I didn't choose this disease. It picked me. And, I was thinking, not one of us as a human being is going to, at the end of our life, we all have gone through something, okay? And that something is different for each person. When somebody goes through, I was in a car accident as an example, and I recovered. Those types of tragedies or life crisis, they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. When you get diagnosed with a chronic progressive disease where there's no treatment and cure, there's a beginning and a middle, but there's no end. Meaning, as humans, we want to wrap it up. I went through a hard time, I dealt with the hard time, and now it's done. When you live with mitochondrial disease, a chronic progressive, things change every month, every year. You have to keep adjusting. There's no end like, oh, this is over now. And boy, oh boy, does that develop character.
Sharon, what I was teeing up for you is talk to me a little bit about your experiencing, sharing your approach to patient families, to patients who are on this journey. You've never been, you never shy away from connecting with our patient families. And I want to hear about that balance of your approach to beginning in middle with no end and welcoming in hope to those conversations. Just talk to me a little bit about what you share with patients who are entering this journey.
After it took me 16 years to get a formal diagnosis, I told you about the commitment I made to Chuck. I said, I will be a part of this UMDF until my last breath. That is a promise I made. The other commitment I made to myself is that if there was any way at all help other patients and families navigate so that no one else has to go through 16 years the way I did to get answers, to get a name, a diagnosis, I was determined to do that, and I still am. So why go through something so hard and devastating like I have and all the other mitochondrial patients have and do nothing with that? In other words, is all of this for nothing? No, it doesn't have to be. Somebody once said to me, if you go through the worst time in your life, remember that you're going to share that wisdom and how you got through it with somebody else that's going to need that help. At the end of the day, we're all looking for connection and we need to be heard. So when I meet a new family or a new patient, first I listen to them. And then I see, is there any way I can help with the navigation part? And I guide them based on my experience and other patients that I've talked to. And then I hope to empower them. Like I said, nobody's going to care more than me about what I need to do or what needs to be done. And it's a level of empowerment that until you do it, it's not something somebody can explain to you, but to be part of the solution, to help raise money, to go to DC and speak on an FDA panel, you are being part of the solution. Nobody's going to save me, but I can be part of a community where we're all trying to save each other. This is not a solo journey. Right. This is not a solo journey is what I'm trying to say. So I think we have two choices. We can let our diagnosis, mitochondrial disease or any other disease you want to throw at me, you can let that diagnosis pull you down and drag you away, or you can rise to the challenge. You can say, you know what, here are the cards that I've been dealt. How can I still make the best possible life I can make? None of us are getting out of here alive. That is a truth and a fact. None of us are getting out of here alive. So what example do we want to set and leave behind? You know, I'm hitting 60 now, and I'm thinking to myself, and what's it all been for? And I can honestly say I'm proud. I have a son, and he's watched me on my mitochondrial disease navigational journey. I want to make sure that I'm showing him the best example of living with the worst possible thing that could happen. And it is possible. It is so possible. And that's what I try to empower patients about, that don't let how you feel dictate who you are as a person. Because otherwise we're all doomed. We're all doomed. If I interact with you and I treat you and other people in my life based on how I'm feeling, the pain level I have, the progression that is happening, mitochondrial disease, I'm an event planner. This is the largest event that I will ever coordinate in my life. And most other people don't have meeting planner, event planner skill set. I do. Right. So what I did was I took that skill set and I just applied it to this disease. And oh my goodness, was it helpful. So I believe that every stinking thing we ever go through, if we're willing, we can take away gifts or lessons from it, right? So my meeting planning skills are now being used for this mitochondrial disease journey that I'm on. So I tell patients that you can empower yourself. Being involved is the best way to do that. And then I go down a list of all the things, options for them.
Yes.
And I think, other than I've done a lot.
Phil, as I'm working through my reverse introduction, at the end of our interview here with Sharon, maybe I'll give her a proper introduction. But one thing that keeps rising up for me is we talk about the patient voice, but in many respects, Sharon's just the voice, right? Like there's the patient voice, the voice of this organization, the voice of just perspective that you bring, Sharon. And Phil, I'm reminded, as Sharon talks about or alluded to some of the work we've been doing in DC. You and I were just reviewing some numbers today. $160 million unlocked through follow-on funding for the National Institutes of Health, through Department of Defense grants. We're going to talk to Sharon about this a little bit, but opine a little bit, Phil, here on as we transition to a conversation around unlocking federal dollars, and someone like Sharon is very important to that.
Sure. Yeah. I think UMDF has its limitations too, right? It's not an endless supply of money, of capital to be able to advance our mission. So when we make investments in research ideas, our goal is to plant seeds, find good partners to plant those seeds with, and hopefully what we're able to advance allows a much larger plant or tree to sprout from it, right? And that's where the follow-on funding from the NIH, or now over the last almost 5-6 years, right, where the Department of Defense has listed mitochondrial disease as a topic of interest for their research funding. And that's opened up another $240+ million pool of funds for researchers to apply with mitochondrial disease ideas. So this is all about leveraging those small seeds into much bigger plants and trees that hopefully yield the fruit, right? That just to complete the entire
many of our viewers and listeners may not realize the important role that patients have played in this and getting mito disease on the map, in those bills. And Sharon, you have direct experience with this. And I thought it'd be good for us to talk a little bit about just some of your experiences as peer review and helping our audience kind of understand the unique role you've played with this organization on that front.
You asked me, how do I help patients and families with feeling empowered? And one of the things I also do, again, I'm a meeting planner. Everything has a timeline. The timeline has a timeline. In the disease world, there's a beginning, middle, and an end on a timeline. And when patients look at me and say, but how come this isn't there yet? How come I can't get that? I remind them that every disease has a cycle in terms of they think it's there, then they try to go prove it's there, and then they proved it's there, and then they learn all about it, and then they study it, and then they figure out therapies or a treatment, ultimately a cure for it, okay? And it was, I think, year 24 before the MDA, Muscular Dystrophy Association, even handed out a wheelchair.
Hmm.
So we need to put all this in perspective, our community. I want help too. That's why I'm working my butt off. So I'm helping to help because we need all boots on the ground. This is not, I'm going to sit back and when the help comes, let me know, give me a call. This is, if to push that needle forward, we all need to be doing something. We all need to do our part.
Well, you're talking a little bit, Sharon, here
I
about
explained to families that there's a timeline for progress, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't just happen. We need everybody involved to also make it happen. The UMDF is a grassroots organization.
right.
This was not professionally designed and built and then rolled out and implemented. This was a handful of parents that just lost their child. And to deal with their grief, they got busy doing something. And so people get to understand that. Here comes the thought. The other powerful piece that I give families and patients to help empower them is the reason I'm doing what I'm doing for as long as I've been doing it and at the level that I do it is because when I learned that mitochondria are linked to all these other major diseases, this is not a solo mitochondrial disease. To even, they're saying now it's a rare form of ALS, to Parkinson's, to Alzheimer's, to metabolic disorders, pediatric cancers. My head blew up. And the reason it did is because to be on this train of helping mitochondrial disease is pretty powerful. But to be on this train where we could, in effect, help all these other diseases through mitochondrial research, we're not just helping mitochondrial patients, we're helping cancer patients, Alzheimer's patients, Parkinson's patients, other rare disease. So you talk about one stone, two birds.
Right.
This is, I don't know if it's just me or I'm nuts, but this is huge. It's huge. So the importance of that, one day I believe that they're going to look back and go, wow. I mean, they're even saying it now that mitochondria, the lens has to be turned around, that maybe cancer is a type of mitochondrial disease, right? We all know about cancer. I'm not saying that it is or it isn't.
Right.
I'm saying that's the importance of mitochondria.
It's why you've been so passionate too about clinical research, engaging the patient community. You know, you heard Phil and I talk about at the top of the show about us finding the appropriate and powerful ways to engage the patient community in clinical research and ultimately into clinical trials. And Sharon, you and I have had countless offline conversations about how we bring that message to the patient community. And I know you are particularly passionate about finding ways to engage the patient community in clinical trials. And I want to spend a couple moments talking about that. And just, again, for anybody who may be listening in, where they're just kind of understanding that part of this mito journey, what do you have to share for those patient families?
Along all the other ways that I've stayed in the solution, and I want to tell people, this isn't about so I can get an award or recognition, or it's not about any of that. It's how I'm keeping sane living with this disease. This is what works for me. Maybe it'll work for another patient. That's what I share. For the last 15 years, I've been directly involved being a clinical trial patient. Remember, when I was diagnosed in 1999, there was one not so successful clinical trial, and today we have dozens and dozens. So when I talk to a patient, I always tell them where we were and where we are now, because that holds hope. So for 15 years, I've been doing clinical trials, also another way to stay positive. And guess what? 2 drugs that I was on helped me. And so I share that. Why do I share it? Is because there is help out there. And I believe my one wish is that before I exit the planet, I will still be here to see the first drug go to market, be available at a pharmacy. That's my secret wish. But we're close. And close in scientific world could mean another 5 years maybe, or 10, but we're close. I really think we're close to getting, it may not be a cure, but it'll be a really strong therapy. The 2 drugs that I had experience with were game changers for me. I had more stamina, more endurance, more energy. So then I was able to work harder at physical therapy. So that's exciting. And I share that with patients about the clinical trials. And Phil talked about in the beginning, I signed up for that too. The Casimir, the drugs are getting there to help the patient population. Where we now need all boots on the ground are patients signing up, because the endpoints that they're capturing has to be more than just a 6-minute walk test.
Right.
I just finished my video capture yesterday, taking off my shirt, shampooing my hair. These are daily things that affect our patient population. So if we can show that there's improvement together with the good drug they're producing, we're going to get there. But we need everybody to help and participate.
I love the call to action, Sharon. I hope you know how much we appreciate it. It's so meaningful when that comes from the voice, right? It's not, Phil and I, quite frankly, we're paid every day to do this, right? And it's something we're passionate about, but you know how meaningful it is when the patient community steps up and they're the voice for this. And I'm probably lobbing you a softball here, but talk to us a little bit about what are the things you've seen change on your nearly 25-year journey with UMDF. I mean, we could probably have a whole nother podcast on this, but give me your TED talk on what you've seen change in our community. You've shared about where we need to go, but take us a step back and what have we really been able to celebrate over this time?
We have gotten smarter about how we're communicating what mitochondrial disease is. Because what happens, first of all, when you say rare disease, people are like, oh, okay, that's not me. Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry for you, but there's no way that'll ever happen to me. So it took a few years for us to figure out, how can we get people to care? How can we get them to buy in? Guess what? We all have mitochondria.
Right.
So here I am living with this horrid, wretched disease, and I love mitochondria. I get excited learning about mitochondria. Why? Because they're fascinating. They're fascinating. So we are now, the message point, I guess, has changed drastically. We all have mitochondria. In the beginning, we were just trying to explain what is mitochondrial disease in 30 seconds or less, when you're communicating to somebody that has no idea what it is. So our communication has improved. Our ways that we're reaching and capturing has improved. Opportunities to advance the needle has improved, meaning our connection with the Department of Defense, with the FDA, and the listening panels. Certainly our advocacy on the Hill, getting noticed. But we have a really powerful sort of hidden stone in our pocket, and that is how important mitochondria are. So even when I think about the health world, those people in the gym that have no disease at all, they want to better their mitochondria. So I think our whole messaging about mitochondria has changed drastically. And our reach has also changed. In the beginning, I felt like Dr. Seuss, Horton Hears a Who. we're here, we're here,
Right.
we're here. And now we know we're here. When I think back and I Googled and I found the UMDF, I swear to you, there was like 3 references. Now we're pages and pages and pages. So we've gotten smarter, faster, better at explaining this disease, connecting people. There's been so much progress, like you say. That would be a whole other conversation.
Well, it's, as you said earlier in the conversation, it's because of people like you who elected to be part of the solution. You know, you've helped trigger that evolution. And I'm going for a rhyme now here, Phil. And it's leading to a revolution, right? I mean, that's ultimately kind of what we're going for here. And it's taking voices like yours that are recognizing that where we've come from and where we need to go. And that coming from the patient voice is so important.
Yes.
Sharon, before we let you go today, because my worry is if I don't schedule my final comment here, I could talk to you for hours, as you know, and we have. But I want to make sure I'm giving you the last word in terms of anything you want to share with our community today on the show. Yes.
And I told Brian before I came on that I wasn't nervous or I wasn't worried until I realized, oh, this is a video interaction and it's going to be out on the internet long after I'm gone, forever and ever. So all of a sudden I got nervous 5 minutes before I hopped on. And I was like, oh my goodness. So as a favor to me, I would like to make a request to you. And now that it's being videotaped, you can't deny my request.
Okay.
So
I'm ready.
Well played.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be controversial. Again, this is me talking about me, my opinion, and what works for me. I noticed being more in the disease world after you get a diagnosis, it's all consuming. We have a really, what I think is a bad habit. And this is what the bad habit is. I'm going to use cancer as an example. When somebody dies from a disease, what does everybody say? I'll tell you what they say, and it irritates me. They say, Johnny lost his battle with cancer. Tommy lost his battle with Alzheimer's. That really bothers me. So my request is, please, after I'm gone, after I die, never, ever, ever say that about me. Never put Sharon Shaw and then she lost her battle with mitochondrial disease. I will come back from the grave and I will haunt you. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why. If you want to ask the patient that is dying and has a grave illness, hey, Todd, do you mind if after you're gone we say you lost your battle? And Todd says, sure, I don't mind. Then that's fine. But I'm going to tell you something. I haven't lost a thing. This is not a battle to lose. It's my life to live. And I don't feel like I've lost a battle. And when this disease takes me out and I have my last day, I have won. I have won. I have kicked its ass to the curb. I have done everything possible to stay positive, help myself, help others. I have not lost a battle. Please never say that about me. Okay.
Well, you have my solemn commitment, Sharon, haunting or not.
Yeah.
It's a disrespect to a patient that day in, day out, we are navigating, adjusting, compromising, giving up, losing. And how dare anybody say that about any patient, not just mitochondrial disease. if we're showing up every day and if we're being of any good to anybody, and if we're helping affect a disease, looking for a treatment, a therapy, and a cure, we've won. We won the battle.
I can't think of a better way to wrap today's episode. You bring so much perspective to these conversations, and I'm grateful we could spend some time together. And Phil, part of my duty as well too was to give a proper introduction. And as I'm hearing you talk today, Sharon, and with us today was Sharon Shaw, an advocate, the voice. She's a promoter, and she's a life event planner. I guess what I've learned a lot today from our conversation, Sharon, I'm going to take that one particularly as a special moment for me on this call. I'm really grateful for the perspective you gave today and your unwavering support for our organization and moreover for the patient families we serve. Thank you so much, Sharon.
I appreciate you.
We'll see you later.
Thanks.
All right, Phil, I feel like we should have just did the outro music right there from Sharon. You and I shouldn't talk, but
to quote the great Charlie Sheen, winning.
Oh, okay. There you go. Right? I wrote down some key words though, right? I loved her comment about this isn't a solo journey. And we talk about that a lot at UMDF, right? We talk about going fast. We know the African proverb of going far, right? And to go far, you do it together. And something else I always draw out of Sharon, I've had the pleasure of knowing Sharon now for 5 years. And Sharon has a quality that I require in our staff. We just hired a new staff partner, and I get the luxury of doing the final interview. And my question for anybody I've ever hired is, tell me about a time in your life you've been at your grittiest, because I only want gritty people on my staff. And even more important in the mito world, because we've got gritty people. This is who we support, are gritty people. Gritty people built this organization. And grit comes in a lot of different ways, but boy, that's Sharon Shaw. If I can't think of a better way to describe her, she's gritty.
Yeah, that's very true. And, I think about the way she described Stanley Davis: commitment, loyalty, love.
Yeah.
I couldn't come up with 3 better adjectives of Sharon Shaw, right? Yeah. Than those 3 right there. So she's the very embodiment of what Stanley Davis and what that award represents. So, we're very fortunate to have someone like that be a part of our community.
Well, truly a special episode for us today, Phil. I hope you love this as much as I did today. I can sit back and just write down Sharon's quotes for an hour or two, and it gives me plenty of things to quote on for years to come. And of course, we got to give special thanks to Homeland Security, the dog, as well too.
He did a good job of making his voice a part of.
That's right. We all have a voice, even Homeland.
We have no idea what he was really saying there, but yeah.
Well, thanks. It's good to be with you again for this episode, Phil. And we won't take as much of a long break this next time, and we'll be back together in August for our next episode. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today.